And here we finally have the F-14A Tomcat. I say finally, there's probably a lot of people out there that aren't really happy about having the F-14 added. I myself am kind of happy, not necessarily a Tomcat fan, but I'm just excited to be getting away from Phantom versus MiG-23. I think it's about time for that. I do need the change up for the game to stay fresh. Is it going to be power creep though? Well, I'll share my opinion with that in this video. That's actually all I'm going to be talking about. Is just a general overview on my thoughts and opinions on the F-14. That is, of course, at least as it pertains to the dev server. And of course, here comes the mandatory everything is subject to change. This is just the dev server. I don't know if this is how the F-14 is going to be added, though I am going to make the assumption that it will more than likely come to the live server in this state, just because War Thunder's history of top tier jets being added, almost nothing ever changes on the dev server unless there's some kind of bug. I can't remember the last time a flight model was changed between the dev server and the actual live drop. Usually if something like that happens, they do it like a week after the plane officially comes out. So the first thing I want to talk about with the F-14 is the flight performance, and god damn, I don't know if the flight performance of this plane is realistic. I don't really care. Anything I say in this video is going to be pertaining to War Thunder, as always with my channel, unless I say otherwise. But the way it is right now, it's just crazy. Cracked, one might even say. You can see this MLD here, my buddy Jake flying the MLD, thanks Jake for this clip. There's absolutely nothing he can do. The Tomcat does literally everything better than the MiG-23, bar the first turn of the fight. The very first turn of the fight, the MLD is going to be able to pull inside of the Tomcat's turning circle, but after that, there's literally, and I mean literally nothing that this guy can do to actually fight the F-14. Now this does of course depend on the fuel and weapons loadouts of both of the aircraft. For example, if the MiG-23 is on significantly less fuel than the Tomcat is when they fight, then obviously maybe the MiG-23 is going to be putting up a better fight. But under more realistic and equal parameters, I'm running, I think, around 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of fuel, as is he, and we both have loadouts that we would be running these two aircraft in real matches. I haven't fired any of the weapons yet, so maybe that's not necessarily a very practical dogfight, but I will say that if you make the fight equal in any way, the F-14 is always going to come out on top. The only way a MiG-23 is actually going to beat this thing is if the F-14 has a very heavy missile loadout, like for example all Phoenixes. For whatever reason you do that, we'll touch on that later. And maybe the MiG-23 is on low fuel with maybe just R-60s, I don't know. But you get the point, this thing is a machine when it comes to flight performance. If you're going to be doing a raid fight like you've seen in some of these clips, me doing to this MiG-23, absolutely nothing in the game is going to be touching you. With a little bit less fuel than I have right now, maybe say 20 minutes, and not having any giant missiles on the plane, so just maybe 20 minutes of fuel, AIM-9Gs, the F-14 can rate fight at about a sustained 10G pull, and also maintaining at least Mach 0.8 throughout the entire time. It is absolutely insane, and based off of that alone, I'm going to say the F-14 is a little bit of a power creep, considering the flight, just the raw flight performance of this plane is ridiculous. Not only that, but you know, getting away from the raid fighting, and you're talking about just a normal, I guess, rolling scissors type fight like you kind of see right here. The F-14 is more than capable of pulling inside of the turning circles of the opponent, or the adversary aircraft, I should say. Things like the MiG-23 it will very handily keep up with on most speeds. Like I said, in that very initial turn of the dogfight, the MiG-23 is going to turn inside of the Tomcat circle. So essentially you get your one chance flying the MiG-23, and if you miss it, well, a good Tomcat pilot is not going to die to you after that. Additionally, in a vertical type of fight, the MiG-23 can't touch the Tomcat. Again, a lot of people say in real life the MiG-23 should be able to out-vertical it or something like that. I don't know. I don't really care. In War Thunder, the Tomcat will absolutely destroy everything in a vertical fight, so you pretty much just probably shouldn't even try it if you're going to be fighting one. In fact, once again, Tomcat is just straight up superior to most planes, but especially something like the MiG-23. The MiG-23 MLD is actually a little bit better off than the MLA, just because of the fact that the Tomcat does everything better than the MiG-23. It is a MiG-23 on steroids, so when you have the extra AOA that the I guess, slats on the MiG-23 MLD allow you to pull, that gives you a little bit more of an edge over the MLA, because the MLA is going to hold its energy retention better at the cost of not pulling so hard, but it ultimately doesn't matter anyways, because you're not going to be holding energy better than the F-14 regardless, so you would much rather want to have the slats on the MiG-23 MLD to let you pull a little bit harder. That being said, neither of them is going to be a fun fight up against the Tomcat. I'm going to go ahead and say right now that there is actually a lot of better aircraft out there for fighting the Tomcat than the MLD. Not necessarily aircraft that have any kind of good chances. I'm talking about aircraft like the J-7E, for example, is probably going to be the Tomcat's hardest opponent, just because it still holds energy pretty damn well, but it can also pull inside of the Tomcat's turning circle a little bit easier than the MiG-23 can, and therefore it actually gives it an opportunity to kind of fight on its own terms in at least one aspect, whereas the MiG-23, absolutely not. The Tomcat does everything better than it all across the board. And dare I say, even something like the F-4E Phantom is actually going to probably be a better opponent up against the Tomcat. Ultimately, in the end, like every plane I'm mentioning, the Tomcat should beat it in a dogfight. It's just that damn good flight performance-wise. But having something with, for example, Agile Eagle is going to let you pull inside of a turn-in circle and get extreme AOA, and maybe let you get 1 or 2 extra gunshot chances than you will in something like an MLD. And I only mean 1 or 2 extra, because when you're pulling really hard, you're bleeding speed, and eventually the Tomcat's just going to get you on energy. And that's true, again, with all of the planes. So maybe when you're fighting a Tomcat, you'd rather have something that pulls really hard and bleeds energy really fast, and just pray you don't miss your 1 or 2 chances of getting a shot in. Moving on from the flight performance aspects, we're going to go ahead and talk about avionics real quickly. The RWR on this plane is fantastic. It's pretty much as good as you get. At top tier, you have 12 different RWR positions, so you'll pretty much always know where the lock is coming from quite precisely. And the radar on this plane is phenomenal. It's definitely the best radar in the game. Without question, there's no competition in that area. And so I'm going to talk about the radar a little bit, in the sense that it's got this new cool mode, TWS. TWS is track well scan. How it works exactly, I couldn't tell you. I'm sure you could look it up, but I will tell you how that's going to play into War Thunder anyways. And it's just going to let you see multiple targets at once, and you can fire an AIM-54 Phoenix at one target while still keeping the radar scanning and showing you where other targets are. On top of that, having track well scan on and shooting Phoenixes allows you to shoot more than one Phoenix at several different targets. So if you have 3 targets painted on your track well scan, you could, in theory, shoot at all 3 targets at the same time with 3 different Phoenix missiles and have them all track the 3 targets. Does that actually happen in practice? Almost never, and in that sense I'm going to kind of call TWS a little bit gimmicky, at least when used in that regard. I think TWS is most effectively used at just finding people. It's kind of like having wall hacks, to be honest, because if they're there and you're pointing your nose at them, the TWS will absolutely see them. And it doesn't seem to really matter if they notch it. I don't know if you can notch TWS, to be honest. And it doesn't really seem to matter what altitude. I will say it's got 4 degrees of vertical scan, but it seems like significantly less. If your nose isn't pointing exactly in the direction, I have a very hard time finding the targets on radar in that mode. Other than that, the normal SRC mode is great. You get 4 modes of normal radar between TWS, pulse Doppler, vertical, and normal SRC, as well as 4 modes of ACM, and they're the exact same thing but in ACM mode. So phenomenal radar. It's going to really help guide your missiles. And speaking of missiles, you get a brand new missile, the AIM-54A Phoenix. This is an extremely hyped missile. It's the first active radar homing missile we've had in the game, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably not the missile you want to be using most of the time. It only pulls 16 Gs, and it's very heavy. It is a big boy. On really big maps, on really high altitude, you could probably get a really high altitude missile launch off from really far away and maybe get that funny missile kill, similar to what we'd see with like the AIM-7F on introduction, except on steroids. The problem is this missile is so damn easy to pull away from, it's like dodging a red top, and anybody that actually sees it coming, and especially considering it gives an RWR ping, they're probably just going to dodge it and not even have to notch or use countermeasures whatsoever. I will say though, with the Phoenix, jumping back to TWS, if you lock somebody up in TWS mode and launch the Phoenix at them, they never get an RWR ping. They will see your plane's direction, and like they'll know that a radar is looking at them, but they'll never know that there's a radar actually locked onto them. So is that useful for you? Maybe it is. Maybe you can try it out and see if it actually nets you any kills. Me personally, I don't see the Phoenix being all that useful. I'm going to be running pretty much all AIM-7Fs and 2 AIM-9Hs. Moving on to the AIM-7F, we know what it is. It's a great missile. It's probably the best SAR missile you can have. Not that any of the SAR missiles are particularly good, just because when you get an RWR ping, it's very easy to take the appropriate measures to dodge it. It's still very susceptible to 90-degree chaffing. It's still very susceptible to notching, just like it's always been. I'm sure you're going to be getting kills with it, but personally, I think that the most deadly thing about the Tomcat is the flight performance combined with 700 rounds of 20mm Vulcan. And I think if you really practice with learning how to fly the Tomcat, not that there's much to learn because it's just so much better at flying than everything else, but I think that combined with the flight performance, the Vulcan, and of course having the option of having some lethal, or the most lethal SAR missiles you can have in the game, it's going to be a very, very dangerous plane to go up against. Forgot to mention that it also gets AIM-9Hs, which is pretty much just a slightly upgraded AIM-9G, and it does feel pretty much like an AIM-9G. I will say that on the dev server, every single missile in the game feels a lot better. It seems like they pull much quicker, they get up to their maximum G overload a lot quicker after coming off of the rail. The inertia coming off of the rail doesn't seem to affect it quite as much as it is on the live server, which I think is a great plus and is probably overall going to improve the missile combat of top tier. So we'll see what that means when the server actually drops live, though countermeasures are still really strong for all missile types. So is it going to be meta changing? I'm not sure. The Tomcat itself, though, is definitely going to be a meta aircraft. Definitely going to be the best plane in the game in this current state. And I'm really hoping that the flight performance is nerfed before the live server. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you.